Now, the caravan of illegal immigrants is coming from Central America to our border. They've already gone through Mexico's city. They're only a few hundred miles away. It's grown to a whopping 5,000 to 6,000 people, and it gets bigger by the hour. Now, they're determined to bum rush the border to crash it, and if they get through, if this 5,000 gets through, it'll be 50,000 tomorrow and 500,000 after that. That's why we need to build the wall now. If we don't have a border, you don't have a country. You have a landmass. Congress has put this off and put this off for months, but they're about to take up funding for the wall in the lame duck session. They need to get this done. Liberals want to abolish ICE and let everyone in, including criminals. Big business on Wall Street, well, they want cheap labor. They want to drive shareholder value. They don't really care what happens. They just want a bigger check at the end of the month. So they let everyone in, too. This is the unholy alliance of all time. Now, you can't let them have that their way because Congress needs to hear from us in no uncertain terms. This is our country. Call Congress. Tell them, build the wall now. You got a phone? Dial it out. 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121. This message paid for and authorized by America First Policies Incorporated. Joining us now, Corey Lewandowski, campaign manager for President Trump 2015-16. Engineered the great victory. Corey also is an author of one book that's already come out that's a must-read called Let Trump Be Trump. That's number one. Number two is he's got another book coming out in like a week, November 20th, called Trump's Enemies from Within, where he's not going to pull any punches, and he's going to name names, and he's going to call out the never-Trumpers running around the White House, running around the West Wing, running around the agencies. And he's with us now, first time on since the midterms. He's also a senior policy advisor to the Vice President's Political Action Committee. Corey, great to have you.
Well, good morning, John. How are you today?
Never better. Your assessment of the midterms.
You know, my assessment is the Democrats have picked up 30 seats in the House right now. There are 10 seats still in play. They're leading about 5 of those, which looks like they'll have a net gain of about 35 seats, giving them a majority, but not a huge majority, which was to be expected. It is better than historical averages, or right in line with the historical average. It is much better than what Barack Obama did in his first midterm, or Bill Clinton did in his first midterm in the House. But, John, the numbers in the Senate, to me, are what are most disappointing. While the Republicans were successful in defeating what should be 3 incumbent U.S. senators, and I mean Florida, North Dakota, and Missouri, we were unsuccessful in holding the seats in Nevada and now Arizona, and missed some opportunities in very, very close races like Montana. And so, you know, honestly, I was hoping for a better night. I like the fact that we're going to have a bigger majority in the U.S. Senate. There was no question we were going to hold the Senate, but I want to see a bigger majority because what I saw was in places where the candidates embraced Donald Trump, put their arms around him, gave him a big bear hug, and said, we're with you on the Trump-Pence agenda. Those are the candidates that won, and I wish we had more of those running last cycle. Okay,
well, let's evaluate that because I agree with you. McSally was a never-Trumper from the start. She had to get on stage with him at the end because she had no choice. The thing was tied or she was behind. She lost. Dean Heller, as you know, was a never-Trumper in the Senate from day one. He lost. Probably the biggest defeat for a Trump supporter was Rosendale in Montana. I actually thought he would win, so I was very disappointed in that. But you're right, and the president called some of these congressmen out. Those that ran away from the president, they all got beat, right? Except Rosendale.
They did. You're exactly right. And look, I look at Andy Barr in Kentucky. Kentucky's 6th district. It was a district where the Democrats targeted. It was the first race to close on election night. He asked for the president to come in and help him. The president went to Kentucky's 6th district. He won that district. Andy Barr is coming back to Congress as a member of Congress because he embraced the Trump-Pence agenda. And, you know, look, people remember, and I like Dean Heller and Martha McSally, and I'd rather have them in the U.S. Senate than their opponents. But people remember that when you say things about this president, that they hold you accountable at the ballot box. And Dean Heller came around and supported the president in the last year of his election campaign. And, But the truth is, John, I really want to win in Montana. I know the president wants to win in Montana, particularly after what Senator John Tester did to Admiral Jackson. I'm surprised that the people of Montana sent him back to Washington, D.C., because he does not hold their values. And, this should be a lesson for anybody that is thinking about running in 2 years from now, that with Donald Trump on the ballot, with Mike Pence on the ballot, your choices are to run with them or to run away from them. And when I look at Carlos Cabello and Mike Kaufman and Mia Love and so many of the other candidates who didn't want to be associated with the Trump-Pence team, they're all former members of Congress now.
Well, it goes a little deeper than that. It even cuts to Virginia. Scott Taylor lost in the 2nd District. I wouldn't call Scott a never Trumper, but at the end, he distanced himself in his final interview with the Virginia pilot. He said he didn't embrace a lot of the president's style or policies. He got trounced, actually, got beat handily by Elaine Loria. Our good friend Dave Bratt in the 7th District was a Trump supporter, but the problem we had, he never had Trump down here because they had to deal with the ridiculous Corey Stewart issue with Confederate flags and running around with photo ops with people in Charlottesville. And so you had a lot of odd issues going on with various people. But, Corey, you're right. I mean, other than Dave here in Virginia, we lost 2 seats. Both of them ran away from Trump. In fact, he called Barbara out, as you know, at the press conference on Wednesday, and basically ended her career by doing that. So, but it is what it is. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. But I think if you look at, Corey, tell me if I'm wrong. You look at the 202 seats that were likely to retain in Congress for the Republican side. None of those now going into 2020, in my mind, are at risk because they weathered the toughest storm they're going to weather, right?
Well, that's right. Look, the last cycle that we just finished now, a week ago today, was the Democrats' holy grail when it came to the House. They were running an opposition campaign, and now they're going to have to run in their records. They have been the party of no, and that means no ideas, no values, no future. But now that they're in control, it's going to be very difficult because, John, as you know, there are almost 24 members who ran on a campaign of not supporting Nancy Pelosi for Speaker of the House. The very first vote that they're going to make is very likely to be a lie to their constituents because they are going to support Nancy Pelosi for Speaker. And so right off the bat, they're going to have to go back and they're going to have to go to their constituents and say, well, I said we weren't going to support Nancy Pelosi. We didn't have an alternative, and so, yes, we lied to you. And then they're going to have to run on their record. And their record is going to be one of obstruction, one of, look, they've already outlined what their record is. Today they're saying that gun control is the priority for the Democrats in Congress. That and investigating the president and all of the parts of the administration. I think they've said they've got somewhere around 84 investigations that they want to launch. How does that help the American people is the question. So these Democrats who won in some of these places, which were a little surprising, I'll tell you what, they're going to have a very difficult time in 2 years. And, John, I don't know if your listeners read this piece, but there was a piece in Axios today, and it couldn't be more dreary on the outlook for the president. He could lose in Wisconsin. He could lose in Pennsylvania. He could lose in Michigan. Well, now they're saying that he didn't win those states. Hillary Clinton actually lost those states. So Donald Trump's chances for re-election, according to the Axios piece today, are, not very good. I fundamentally disagree with it. These are the same prognosticators who told us that Donald Trump was going to lose in the biggest landslide election since Ronald Reagan's re-election effort. And I just don't believe this stuff. It is Trump against the mainstream media every single day, and he's proven them wrong time and time again. So your listeners have to just take everything with a grain of salt, I think, John. They have to understand that those members of Congress who won on Tuesday night are going to have to now run on their record, which is going to be a record of bringing the country in the wrong direction. And in 2 years from now, when Donald Trump is on the ballot and all of the Trump people show up and vote, it's going to have very different results.
And the Democrats will have about a 12 to 13 seat majority, something like that. 15 of those seats that they won, Trump carried their congressional district in 2016. You get Trump on the ballot in 2020 with a track record behind them, he's going to carry those districts again. every one of those 15 is going to be at risk. So, Corey, if you really look at this and you look going into 18, all the headwinds were against the Republicans maintaining control, all the people who retired, all the never-Trumpers, all of the Republicans in districts that Hillary won, that's all gone now. That slate's clean. They're all out. All the retirements are done. Now, the Democrats are going to have to defend seats carried by Trump, right? So it flips over. And I think that's the big story to be told here.
Well, you're right, John. Look, the retirements were the single biggest factor in the Republicans losing the House. We had 42 or 43 Republican incumbents who decided to retire in districts that if they had run or sought re-election, were very likely that we would have held at least half of those seats, giving us a 20-seat margin more than what we have right now, which would have been the majority. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, the problem that the Republicans face going into 2020 is the exact converse of the Senate map of what it was in 2018. We have a number of Republicans up in 2 years in very competitive states, and the Democrats don't have as many up. Now, 2 years in politics is a lifetime. People could die in office. They could leave. Who knows what could happen? But that being said, the Republicans definitely have more seats to defend in 2020. And I think you will find some bright spots coming out of the 2018 election. Look, John James in Michigan ran an unbelievably competitive race against Debbie Stabenow, who was supposed to be the 800-pound gorilla. He ran very well. And I would hope that John would run again in 2 years against the junior senator from Michigan, because with Donald Trump on the ballot, John James becomes the next U.S. senator from Michigan 2 years from now. Mm-hmm. But the other thing we've learned, John, and what the American people are once again focusing on, is the ballot integrity system that we have in this country is highly questionable. We're back to where we were 18 years ago with hanging chads and the chaos in Broward County and Palm Beach County. You know, Rick Scott is the winner of that U.S. Senate race. Ron DeSantis is the winner of that governor's race. But what we're seeing across the board, not just in Florida, but in Georgia and in other places, in New Mexico, is Democrats just happen to find ways to produce ballots that didn't exist on Election Day. I don't understand how this happens in this day and age. We were so concerned, the Democrats were so concerned of potential Russian interference in the 2016 election. Nobody is talking about the fact that the Board of Supervisors down in Florida has disregarded court orders, has not reported the number of ballots that were cast, and there's been no accountability, and we're still counting. We may not have the election results in Florida for another week or two in that U.S. Senate race, and I just don't understand how that happens anymore, John.
It's ridiculous, Corey. And, you know, now they find a box of provincial ballots in an Avis car rental, the back of the car. I mean, the incompetence there has been going on forever. But, look, all the votes are in now. There's going to be a recount. It's a machine recount. This election is going to be certified. Rick Scott is going to win. He's got a 12,000 vote lead. DeSantis bigger than that. And in the history of machine recounts, there's never been an election where one candidate was ahead by 10,000 or over that was even close to changing it. You know, if you're 1,500 or something like that, that could happen. 12,000, it's done. Scott is going to win. Kemp is going to win in Georgia. I want to get to your book in a minute, but just looking at the Republicans up, Corey, very quickly here in 2020, and I'm going to just take 30 seconds on it. I'm going to go fast. These are seats that the Republicans are going to win. Tennessee, Alexander. Capito, West Virginia. Cassidy, Louisiana. Susan Collins might be tough, Maine. John Cornyn, Texas. Cotton, Arkansas. Steve Daines, Montana. Enzi, Wyoming. Joni Ernst, Iowa. That might be a little hard. Cory Gardner in Colorado. That might be at play. Graham, he's going to win easy. South Carolina. Hyde Smith, Mississippi, will win. James Inhofe, Oklahoma, he'll win. Whoever is the Arizona senator, somebody's got to be in that seat. So then you go down the line. McConnell, Purdue in Georgia, Idaho, Robertson, Kansas. I mean, there's maybe 2 or 3 seats that are in play, but right away, the Democrats start off losing Alabama. They're not going to hold that seat. Right?
No, that's right. And that's right. Look, we're going to win the Alabama seat, and I think for the Republicans, and I believe Cory Gardner would tell you this, he is probably the number one target in the country for an incumbent Republican senator. So, look, you're going to see money spent in Colorado. You're going to You're going to see a lot of money spent in Alabama. That's going to be a seat that comes back home to the Republicans. But just the fact that you've got that many incumbent U.S. senators on the ballot means that resources are going to be diverted.
Right.
And so the opportunity to be on the offense is much harder in other places.
Right. And then, of course, the Susan Collins seat, they're going to spend as much money as they can trying to knock her out, because she voted for Kavanaugh, obviously. So you got that. Corey Lewandowski here on the John Fredericks Radio Network, Trucking the Truth Across America. Corey, I want to ask you about your new book coming out in just a week from today. You're going to have a big grand opening, if you will, with that. You're going to be touring the United States, Trump's enemies. What can we expect? Give us a little tidbit.
Well, look, this is the first and only book in the first 2 years of this presidency where the president sat down and gave a formal interview. And it's very important. It's very timely. We ask him about the midterms, and he answers the questions. We ask him about his thoughts on Andy McCabe and Jim Comey and Peter Strzok and Lisa Page. We ask about his relationship with Barack Obama and what that's like. We ask the greatest parts of being the president and the most difficult parts of being the president. It is a long, in-depth interview. But we also ask him about his enemies. We ask him about his relationship with the mainstream media and the press and the adversarial nature of it and what that means. So all of the things that the American people want to hear and want to know what the president's thinking, we have a verbatim discussion in there with the president, and he answers those questions very, very candidly. We ask about Anonymous, and we ask about the people who served in his administration, who were supposed to be there to help him and were only there to hurt him. We talk about the people that Bob Woodward mentions in the book, and we ask the president his opinion. I think it's the first time he talks about those individuals, and he gives an in-depth story of how, when he came to Washington, D.C., he didn't know the people that he does now. He didn't know what Washington, D.C. was really like and how deep the swamp is. But 2 years into it, he knows all the players. And what you're going to see, John, in my opinion, based on what we write about in the book and what he talks about, is you will see changes in his administration. You will see cabinet officials who are leaving, who maybe he regrets having here in the first place. You know, the first cabinet official to leave after the midterms, Jeff Sessions, has already been announced. I anticipate more. I anticipate more staff changes in the building, which I think is a good thing for the president, because when he brings in individuals who knew him prior to being the president, I think of Larry Kudlow, John Bolton, Bill Shine, those individuals are there to serve the president and not themselves. And the more of those people he brings in, the better he will be and the better our country will be for it. So we talk all about it in the book.
Are you going to name names?
John, you know I'm going to name names. That's what I do. Look, I talk about the unelected bureaucrats from the State Department to other agencies. I talk about people very specifically who have been in that building. I give specific examples. Look, I don't hold back. You know I don't. And the reason I don't is because I am here to support the president. And, you know, John, I had a conversation with someone just last week, and I said, we have a new book coming out, Trump's Enemies. And the person said to me, am I in the book? And I said, why would you need to ask that question? And this is a person who, you know, is at least on the cursory edge of talking to the president on a fairly regular basis. And I said, if someone was writing a book and said, hey, Corey, the name of the book is Trump's Enemies, there is no equivocation. My name is not in that book. You understand, right? There's no question that I am not an enemy of the president, but so many people continue to do things which are against his will or don't help him, but they do it on the outskirts. They do it on the edges of the way he operates, that they have to question if they made the book. And so, look, Dave and I were very honest in this book, as we were in the first book. Look, the Let Trump Be Trump book was a very honest assessment. This book is a very honest assessment. It has true intellectual honesty to it. I stand by every word of the book, and people are going to be very surprised about how honest the book is, because that's who we are. And by the way, that's what the president deserves, is honest people telling him the truth of when things are good, but also when things are bad.
When is it going to be released?
So it'll actually be officially out 2 weeks from today, but we're going to start the media tour right after Thanksgiving. So we're going to be all over the country. We're really excited. If you pre-order the book now at Amazon or Barnes & Noble or wherever you want to go, we really think it's going to be a great book. It's hopefully going to be as successful as the last book. And and I want to thank your listeners for being so supportive of all of our efforts. But Trump's Enemies, How the Deep State is Undermining This President, is the first book out after the midterms. It is the only book that the president gave an interview for, and I think your listeners are going to love it. All
right, we're out of time. Trump's Enemies, pre-order it on Amazon now, Corey Lewandowski. And if you can get one over to me when I will get him to sign it when we meet up over the next several days after it comes out.